Perfect.
Let's rock and roll.
Welcome, welcome, everybody. So today you're going to get a raw look into doing the work with Erin and I. I almost said just now, I almost said Erin because that's the only way my voice to text ever has an opportunity to spell your name correctly. So Erin and I are going to be talking about um, emotions today, feeling all the feels. And so do you want to say your bit, baby, until we have our recording? Actually, like, are
I
these
was like,
episodes?
do you want to bring us in or do you just want us to rock and roll?
I want to bring us in.
Okay.
I want to bring us in because I just want to,
Doesn't have to be long today, maybe just a little like,
yeah,
let's get connected with our bodies.
yeah, recognizing that so much of almost all of us have had the experience of conditioning the disconnection from our mind and our bodies, that our minds have been running the show um, to try and keep us safe. And within that, we have oftentimes lost the connection from our knowing. So, what we're going to do is we're just going to take a couple breaths together. Actually, let's take 3 counted breaths together. And in those 3 breaths, we're going to do that with the intention of connecting our minds and our bodies as one. So, breathing in, connecting our breath deep in our bellies, and then as we exhale, letting go of that old story of the two not working as one. Breathing in our connection, our mind and our body, and our connection to others, and where we have also felt a supreme disconnection in the people that are sitting right in front of us. Breathing in connection, and then letting go of this idea that we are somehow separated, that the experiences that we are having are not actually in unison with each other. We're all experiencing the same thing at the same time in our own different circumstances and different stories in different ways, but essentially, we are all the same. So, on that note,
Party, party.
yes. So
So,
today, Erin, you get to be sharing, like you're in the hot seat today, a
yeah.
little bit,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
The seat of fire, the seat of the depth of water, like in the depth of your emotions. Would you like me to narrow some questions down in, or would you like to just
Yeah.
share
I
what's
think,
coming?
yeah, like kind of, where do you want me to start? Obviously, I've processed a lot, but it's one of those things of like, for the listeners and the viewers of like, okay, let's hone in what we're really specifically talking about here so they can kind of get not an eagle eye view, like a magnifying glass view, right, of what's happening real time.
Yeah. All right. So one of the things that you and I study, that we explore, that we play with, one of the tools that we play with is human design, and within that, we have half of the people on this planet are what's called emotionally undefined. And as an emotionally undefined person, we don't have really a lot of our own emotions. What we do have is a space in which we collect other people's emotions. We oftentimes magnify that, and then we're putting that back out into the world. And in that experience of being disconnected from our minds and our bodies, oftentimes what happens for people that are emotionally undefined is all the emotions, all the feelings, and the sensations that are happening to others, we pick up within us and we think it is our own. I am emotionally undefined. Erin is emotionally defined, as is my husband. It's about a 50-50% of the population that is going to be emotionally defined. And so, what that means, as emotionally defined, you have a consistent emotion, a consistent wave of emotions, and it's always there. So, how I was explaining this to Erin when we were in Maui together recently is that when you are emotionally defined, it's like you have a bowl, and that bowl is full of all of your different emotions. Everything from the most elated, enlightened, blissful state to shame, anger, guilt, despair. They're all there, and this bowl is full of them. And whenever, as they're going through life, they're having to experience this wave of emotion, it's always consistent for them. It's always there. And people vary in the amount of time that it takes them to go through their wave. Um, and it can vary widely. I was just talking to a client whose child is defined, and she has discerned that it takes about 2 minutes for her to arrive at her wave. And she's seen that and observed it within her child, which was such a delightful conversation. Whereas, like Erin, you know that it takes you anywhere between a few hours to a half a day, sometimes maybe even a full day or so now to
Mhm.
ride through your wave, whereas my husband takes quite a bit longer. And I think that with awareness, riding our wave comes quicker. And for those of us that are undefined, we have an empty bowl, and we go along and we collect emotions from others and we put it in our bowl and we think that they're our emotions until we learn and have awareness that we're just picking up the energy of all those around us. Did I miss anything with that definition? Anything that you
No.
want to add?
Mm-mm.
Okay. And Erin's response is her sacral basically saying, nope, you got it, sister. So, Erin, are you prepared to share the experience that you're having with your parents
Yes.
right now? Okay.
Yep.
So that's Erin's consent, and she has a wave to ride. We've been riding this wave together for the last
Well,
day
since
or
last night, right?
yeah.
About 12 hours, a little bit more than 12 hours. I also want to say that, and I know we talk about this a lot, but it is very important to me for our listeners, for our viewers, for our clients, obviously for myself first and foremost, is that I am a product of my product, if you want to call it that, right? Like, and I am committed when I say, I think, and I'll speak for Tanya, Tanya can correct me, but when Tanya and I say we are committed, we are all in, that means 100% all the way, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how any feeling that we are afraid to feel, it is important to me that I don't want to say lead the way, but that's the words that come to mind because I can't bring someone else through this. And it's not going to be the exact same thing, right? When someone
Sure.
experiences this, but until I do it for myself, I can't take someone else through it. And authentic is the word that comes to me. It is extremely important that we, Tanya and I, and who University is, who we, it's us, right? Represent is that we are authentic. And one of the things that I've always wanted is to see the behind the scenes for a lot of, for lack of a better word, coaches or healers or whatever term that, resonates with you, because I think that there is kind of like, well, you get to see the after effect, right? After I've been through it. And I'm not encouraging when you're having, there's a difference between a wound and a scar, right? A wound is like, it's raw, it's really sensitive. Like when I was going through my divorce, like I wasn't really ready to always talk about that, but now it's a scar and it's not a problem, right? So I'm not advocating that you talk about something you're not ready to talk about. And I'm also saying, as I've already processed a large majority of it, I think it is helpful to actually see kind of like, I'm not all the way through it, but I'm on the tail end of it, right? I'm not in that anger phase right now. I'm on the love and the compassion and the understanding phase. And I think it's important to share. And so I've always wanted and looked for someone that could kind of show me like, hey, where are you in the trenches? Like, tell me this part. And I'm grateful to be one of those people for humanity. So
yeah. And as you're saying that, so to what I said earlier, as you are explaining that, I feel in my body a sensation in the middle of my back, kind of behind my heart, in between my emotional solar plexus and my heart, this almost like stabbing pain in my back right now, this discomfort. Like, you're not quite in the scar. You're like, I got the scab. I'm starting to form a scab, and it's not quite to the scar phase.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, because this is also very important to both of us, I want to ask you another question so that people can witness what this part of it is like. Do you feel safe to share what you're going through right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it uncomfortable? Yes.
Yes. I can feel it in my body how uncomfortable it is.
Right. It's kind of like similar to the last podcast that we talked about, right? Like, am I willing? Yes. Does it feel uncomfortable? Yes. Does all of I always say about 10-year-old Erin, because that's what kind of resonates to me and lots of things that changed in my life around that time. But like, we each have our little inner child that's like, my 42-year-old self was like, yes, I'm willing. And my 10-year-old is like, but what's going to happen? Right. And so having that, or I should say, or on the flip side, not doing it, it's like when we were little and there's a monster in the closet. The monster's always going to stay in the closet until you open up the closet and you're like, look, baby girl, nobody's in the closet. It's okay. I know it's scary, but there's no one there. And then you get to see that, right? So it's important to me that I think that a lot of people can be like, oh, this is the work. And it's like, the work isn't like, oh, it feels good. The work isn't like, oh yeah, it's being committed, right? The work I really feel like is being committed even when, right? Being committed when you're like, oh, this doesn't feel good at all. And I'm still all in. When I say all in on me, right?
And for those of you listening, this is a lot of the work that Erin and I do together with coaching, because what's so important is we always first have to establish safety. We have to have a space of safety and security for doing this work. And so jumping in, like Erin and I are at the deep end of the pool today. What we're going to be talking about is real deep end of the pool stuff. And we have an established safety, unconditional love, and empowerment between the two of us that we have created. And we trust that implicitly, right? So for us to be able to share this with you is that behind the scenes, and it takes a tremendous amount of courage and practice, like practicing our safety, practicing being courageous at facing our fears, because those fears are real. Those fears will make you think, I should just not say anything. I should just shut down, or I need to fight. Like, I am in the position where I'm backed into the corner and I feel like I need to fight.
One last thing I want to say is, because we have that safety and we're kind of, Erin's processing a little bit in real time, the conversation that I'm going to have with my parents, even though I have already kind of practiced it in our mind, this is actually helping and healing and soothing to me, because we can kind of already have this conversation before, like, it's kind of like when I remember when I was in 5th grade and the girls were kind of being mean to me, and I had to practice several times what I was going to say to them before I said it. I was doing that with my dad. Right. And so this is this practice that we get to do before you show up to where you want to say what you want to say, and getting to that place from love and compassion, and not for Erin, the anger and the frustration was last night. So I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. Here come the burps. Before we move forward.
Yes.
What does little Erin need? Does she need a hug? Does she need?
No. It's almost like I need what's coming to mind. If I don't judge anything that's coming to my brain, I almost need like shoes as equal as my parents.
Mm,
right? Because when you're a little kid, you're looking up to your parents. There's that height difference, right?
mhm.
And there's also this like they know better than you. They have lived longer than all of those things, right? Versus no, I'm just as important. I get to say what I want to say, and yeah, like I don't wear high heels, but like some type of like platform comes to mind for me to stand on.
So I was having a visual before we actually started talking about this of seeing Erin in her power pose, like
Yeah.
standing up and in her
Mhm.
power pose. So would you like to stand up in your power pose, or do you just want to visualize you being
Yeah.
at
I
eye
think
to
I
eye
want to
level?
visualize, and I probably will be leaning in, right? Like
Hmm.
me leaning in is like, hey, I'm gonna go toe to toe with you, right? Like, so
Hmm.
I might obviously my hands are on my or my elbows are on my thing, and I'm like, let's go, let's
All
talk.
right. So would you like to share with our viewers
Mhm.
what you're experiencing right now? Your parents are on island with you.
Correct. They
They've
came
come to
over.
visit.
Hmm. And they are staying in their own, place. And what I have noticed, so today is Monday, they've been here since Thursday, I think. What I have noticed is that how I feel in my body when I am around them. Well, first of all, if you go check the last podcast, you'll check out what my underarms look like. And what I am now seeing, we talk a lot about awareness. Awareness sometimes when we're just learning something, when I say learning, becoming aware of what we are experiencing, the awareness happens after the fact. And my underarms flaring up, my body being like, oh shit, here we're about to go to war, right? Because that is the type of environment I lived in at my house. Yes, my parents are married. They've been married for 50 plus years. Yes, they love us. No, I was never sexually abused. I think I was maybe spanked twice, right? Like the physical abuse wasn't like people might have with, themselves, with other families. But what I experienced, what my body is telling me now, I experienced when I'm with them is a full on assault
To your nervous system,
to my nervous system
a loss
and
of safety.
a loss of safety. And this I'm sure some people can, if you were a peacemaker in your family, noticing my dad raising his voice at my mom when my mom says what she wants. He's raising his voice at her. He's getting upset with her, trying to get her to change her mind. And then me coming in and feeling like, this tennis ball of like trying to keep the peace because the vibration is so intense and the sound is intense, the tone is intense, the actual energy is so intense. And what I told Tanya last night, I was like, when you go to the doctor and you looking back, you were so stressed out, but you just were in that stress all the time. So they're like 1 out of 10 and you're like, oh, 3, it's not that bad. And then you've like, healed and you're like, how the fuck did I do that? Like, this is me getting to see because I haven't been with them for 6 months.
Hmm.
This is me being out of that environment and then me being put back in and being like, holy shit, this is fucking intense
Hmm.
because I was so used to it for 40 plus years. And now I'm not. And I'm like, this is too much. I don't want to do this anymore. So that's basically over the last couple of days, we've been over there hanging out with them. Yes, Jason and I went to Hana for a day, but for the majority of the time we're with them. And like I said, the tones, the anger, the back and forth of the condescending, um, harping is the word I can think of. Like, my mom making comments about my dad in front of my dad to my dad and my dad making comments, so it's just this like, Jesus, can we just have a conversation?
And can I share a little bit of
Yes.
my reflection from last night?
Yes, of course.
So Erin and I are texting back and forth. And in that, she's like, I'm just so tired of a laundry list of things. And one of the things that I was seeing from my perspective, right? I'm not in the middle of it. I'm realizing the depth of the trauma that sweet little Erin was exposed to. And thinking about like, I know you, Erin, as the adult, to be a ferociously protective and loving mother. And so I see how you parent your daughter. And I'm like, what what would it be like to not have to be giving all of your energy to your parents? What would it be like to be able to say, I don't want to go? Because we were talking about whether or not we were going to do this podcast today. We were talking about what we were going to talk about. We were needing to reorganize it so that you could go to lunch with your parents. And at the same time, you were feeling like, I don't want to go. And I asked you, could you just say no?
Mhm. You want me to respond to what I said, or you want me to like, and then that little Aaron comes up, right? Like, because of the conditioning that our parents, specifically, we're just talking about me, specifically what it has been like is we've talked about withholding love and withholding money, right? So you have this mother, my mother, who was like, if I tell her how I feel, then there's that little 10-year-old Aaron who's used to, if I tell you what I feel, you're going to be mad at me. You're not going to talk to me and you're going to withhold love from me. Right.
Hmm.
And then there's the withholding of money from my dad as a way to control and being like, then we're just not going to, like, we're not going to come visit you because this is the way you're going to treat us. Right.
Hmm.
And, why did we even come? Why did we spend our money? All of this stuff of, you know, and as a little girl feeling like I can't say what I want to say because then people get mad about it and it
Hmm.
makes them upset. And then it's not just they're upset at me. And then what they would also do is then they would banter and fight back and forth, right? Like my dad would make comments like, well, she's saying this because of the way you act, Connie, which is my mom's name, right? And then
Hmm.
my mom being mad at my dad, and then they would fight. And it's like, well, I don't want to say anything because I don't want them mad at me. I don't want them mad at each other. Like I just want it to be peaceful.
And what is that? What is the cost of the peace in that particular model, in the old model of the old Aaron?
just built up anger and frustration, right? Like, and really what it ends up being is it is an outward projection of my loving and unconditionally loving husband and daughter. That's what it used to be, right? Noticing that I would my flip would get switched very quickly. You know, they might have said something and it was like no big deal, but it's that there's so much anger and frustration bubbling up. It's like you don't need much when you got a huge volcano, you know, kind of like an iceberg. You know, if you got 10% on top and you got 90 underneath the water, there's not much that you need to, because you already have everything underneath ready to. I know it's water, but you know what I mean? Like there's just so much that's already there. So
it's like an Instapot.
Yeah.
You can have just a little bit of water in that and it builds up so much pressure. You can have a lot of water in that and it still builds up so much pressure. And everything that's behind that, once that valve gets opened up or triggered.
Yeah. Tanya's undefined and I'm defined. I'm like, I don't feel much.
Yeah. I'm over here running all of your emotions for you.
I mean, yes, I feel anger, frustration, right? Like last night, like I was telling you, and this is what I want to convey, or we talk about this a lot. Like last night, I was like, I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of, like, I had my laundry list, right? We have to go through the I don't want. We have to express that anger and frustration to then move to the place of like, okay, what do I want? What am I willing to not accept as in like mediocre, right? But what am I willing to, if we're going to have a relationship, what's it going to look like? Because let's be honest, if they weren't my parents and they want to continue to stay the way that they stay, we would not be hanging out ever. Right. And it's okay. This, you know, we've even had this conversation multiple times because my parents and I were talking about marriage yesterday, and they were talking about, you know, my brother, and I still call her my sister-in-law, but they're divorced now. And my husband, my brother, and my sister-in-law, and they were making comments about them getting divorced. And I was like, it is not a fucking trophy to be like, I stayed together for 50 years and I hate my fucking spouse. Like, there's so much conditioning in our society and religion and parental and all of the things that, like, you know, that we stay with our family, that we stay with our blood family, that we stay married, that we get to redecide every single day if you want to be married still, if I want to keep having you as my mom and my dad, like have a relationship or not, if I want to, all of the things. And it's a difficult conversation to have when you have parents and or spouses and or friends or insert whatever that are not at the awareness that you are.
Yep.
And it used to be that I would want them to see my point of view. Mm-hmm. And now it has gotten to a place that I don't, and not like flippant, I don't give a fuck, right? But like, it doesn't matter. You can agree or don't agree. It's okay, right? I'm unattached, but this is what I want in any relationship that I enter into. Mm-hmm. And it's okay if we don't want the same things.
Yep. So last night you were in a place of, I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this.
Yep.
And little Erin pokes up and she's like, what are her fears? My mom's going to say something or not say something. And then that's just going to cut right to the heart of me. Like
yes. And also
she can hurt me.
Because Grayson our daughter is an extension of me. Mm-hmm. Then if I say what I truly say, then she's not going to want to come over here. And Grayson loves spending time with him. Mm-hmm. And so how am I affecting other people because I say what I want? Mm-hmm. And yeah, like her being upset, or it's really like we always used to call it the silent treatment, right? Mm-hmm.
Let me just check in with you at the moment. How are you feeling in your body?
What are you just burpee. And I'm just like, it's fascinating because when I truly act from a place of love, you can see that they are just 10-year-old little kids too, right? Like what will probably end up happening, I'm not sure, but what will probably end up happening is we will have this deep conversation and there will be lots of tears. And like at their core, they want to be supportive, loving parents. Mm-hmm. They don't know how because their conditioning has taught them how to be the parents that they currently are. And what I'm thinking about right now is it's fascinating because my mom was sitting outside of me the other day and she was just like, I'm done with my dad. I'm tired of him, you know, all the things, right? But she doesn't know how to stand up for herself. And then this goes back from the very beginning of what I said in this podcast of like, we have to go first. We have to, and I don't go first so I can be like, I taught people how to do it, but by me going first, people get to watch us and then they get to have their own version of how do they want to do it. Right. Mm-hmm. But she has the same patterns, right? She continues to do things for her father that she's angry and resentful, and her body, right, is showing her because of all of her dis-ease in her body. But she continues to go back. It's like the dog that you beat. It's like any kind of love is some kind of love, right? Mm-hmm. And
that was a conversation that we had last night, right? Is that sometimes even abused children, they still love their parents and they want, they deeply want that connection with them. Yep. But they, it comes at their own sacrifice.
Yeah. And a little bit of how I felt as a 10-year-old little girl is like, I'm tired of being the fucking parent all the time. There's a little bit of that still, like, well, I got to be the one. Like adult Erin is like, of course I go first. Right. And then 10-year-old's like, well, why do I just get to be a kid and go play outside and not have to like try to teach you guys how to do everything?
So what would it look like if 10-year-old Erin was like, done?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like what you asked. Mm-hmm. It's like what you asked me last night. Like, I don't know what that looks like. Right.
Right.
Like, I don't know what let's go play looks like. I do. Like, hey, let's go to the beach. And then what comes into mind is like, well, you guys can't go to the beach, can't walk on the beach, can't do this on the beach. Like, okay, we can't play there. So
I'm
there's,
going to the beach.
yep,
You can come with
come or
me
not.
or not.
Yep. Yeah. So, and also this goes back to intimacy, right? If
Hmm.
we're going to have a relationship, I don't think I do anything, and maybe it's my 29 too. I don't do anything half hearted.
Hmm.
If we're going to be in a relationship, we're not going to be like coffee talk, surface talk,
Yeah.
right? We're going to talk about all the things.
And that doesn't have to mean that it's like always that super deep, but
No.
it's like if I'm committed, if I am all in, I am 100% all in. I'm not doing this half-assed, half-hearted. If I'm 99%, I'm not all in,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so that means I'm willing to feel whatever needs to be felt to have
And
that intimacy.
yeah. And I think this is one of those times where I feel like this does need to be said because old Aaron will be like, I'm done with you. Like, I don't like something about you because it's just like, I'll just write you off. I'm done. Right.
Hmm.
Versus giving that person the chance, if you, Aaron, come from it from a loving perspective and say, listen, this is what I'm wanting out of our relationship.
Hmm.
Then letting that person make their own decision and be like, do I want to have that or do I not? But they get to choose versus me kind of choosing for both of us. I mean, I've like nixed so many friends that way, mostly women. Like,
Hmm.
oh, well, she's acting like this, like, oh, boom, done, right? She doesn't even get a chance to be like, well, So I think in that regard, like, it feels good to say, this is what's coming out for me. This is what I want. This is the type of relationship. If you don't want that, I'm totally okay with that. You can be Grayson's grandparents. You can, but like, don't expect me to be calling and making small talk. We're not doing that. Or Erin isn't going to do that, right? Like,
Hmm.
and that's okay.
So just before your parents came in, you and I had a conversation over text, as many of our conversations are, right? Or over Marco Polo. And one of the things that we talked about was I was poking the bear a little bit. I was pushing you on the levels of no. And just
Mhm.
for our listeners, like there are different levels of no, just as there are different levels of yes and the vibration that is behind them. In this particular case, I used a mutual friend that very much kind of triggers and embodies your mother.
Mhm.
Which, by the way, for those of you listening, Erin's mom is a reflector, which means that not a single one of her centers is defined. Very rare. Only 1% of the population has that, and that means she's picking up everybody's thoughts, everybody's beliefs, everybody's fears, everybody's intuitions, everybody's emotions, everybody's gut feels, everybody's safety. Like she picks up everything, and she needs like a full lunar cycle to actually make a decision that's correct for her. So with that, um, my guidance, for lack of a better word to describe people, my intuition, my knowing, the knowing that I have, was kind of encouraging me to poke Erin a little bit before her mom came about this mutual friend, and just like offering a comparison, and it brought up some of that anger within Erin. And because we're a safe space, I can receive Erin's anger. I can receive when she gets frustrated or angry, seemingly at me.
Mhm.
And really, it's just like I'm helping sort of excavate or detox some of those pockets out of her, just as she does for me as well. And we were talking about being able to say no. And we were talking about the energy that goes with, like, there's the no that's like, why aren't you listening to me? I said no. There's an anger. There's quite a bit of energy attached to that.
Mhm.
People aren't listening to me. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. Right. Then there's also that no that comes from such a low vibration of like shame or guilt or like their deservedness. And then it's kind of funny. We started a really low vibration with a no, which takes a ton of energy because it's literally like a black hole.
Mhm.
Shame, guilt, unworthiness, undeservedness is like that black hole. It just sucks energy so much. And then when we get up to the point of anger and frustration, we're right at that place where the energy is actually increased, and it's right at that threshold of wanting to push over. And that's a scary place for a lot of people to be, especially if they've lived in that black hole of darkness, of shame, of guilt, of unworthiness. So even sometimes playing in that space of anger can be super terrifying because there's so much power there. And
Yeah.
then right on the other side of that comes that no that's like, no, that no that really takes no effort or energy. It just flows. It has ease. It has peace. And so one of the things that I was asking Erin last night while she was in her wave, and she was in some of that wave of anger and frustration. I'm sick and tired of this. I'm done with this. I don't want this, blah, blah, blah. And I asked the question, what would it be like to not have to give any energy just to telling your parents what you're a yes to or what you're a no to, and having the energy of being able to say that, communicate that, which didn't land super well last night. She's like, I'm done talking. I'm going to put my phone down.
And that was after we had already kind of like, Tanya's being funny, but like we had already, and this is what I was telling Tanya this morning. A couple things. Number one, the thing with the generator is we get frustrated. We get to the point of frustration. This is really important that people get this because I am a generator. And people who, one of the not self themes is we get frustrated and we quit ahead of time, right? So I was already to the point, I was in frustration and I looked over to Jason, we were laying in bed. I'm like, I'm not going to lunch with my parents, right? You can go, I don't care, right? Which is me quitting, air quotes, right? For those of you listening, it's quitting. And then when you said, oh, you need to ride your wave, I'm like, ooh, okay, good point. Because going back to how have I cut people out of my life, it's like, I'm so frustrated, boom, done, right? That's easy for me to do. There's no growth there, right?
Nope.
And so you're like, ride your wave. And we're always saying, Tanya and I are always saying the same thing. We just kind of get around it, do it differently. But you were asking, what would it be like to have no energy attached to that? No. And I'm like, I can't even go there right now. Like, I just need to get all of this out. And I think for the people that have, and we all have anger, right? But like, if you have a lot of anger in you, it's kind of like, we're not ready to kiss yet until I'm done being mad at you. Right. And I had to be mad and I had to get all of that out before I was ready to have kisses.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know if there was a point. It was just mainly like, you can get to the place of having no energy with your no, but first you have to move through that emotion first. And I probably just need to explore, like, why does that, kind of what I was talking to you about this morning, is like, why does that bother me so much? It's because I think from maybe a generator or a power person place, like, it takes a lot to open up. I don't want to say generator, but from maybe the power place we talk about in the previous podcast about power and love. Like, we both have both of it, right? But like, I probably am more so a power base, and I'm learning how to I already have the love in me, right? But like, expand it.
Mm-hmm.
But from the power place, it's like, I guess what's coming to mind is like, it takes a lot of guts to say how we feel, because every time we have, it's been shut down, kind of thing, maybe.
Yep.
So here I am sharing, and then what I interpreted it is almost like, you did not do this, but conditioning is like, well, you shouldn't be so upset, right? What would it be like to go from a place to answer from a place of no, from Zen? And if you haven't ever been allowed to be upset, that feels like, I'm trying to say my feelings, I'm trying to share with you, I'm not ready to be at a no from a Zen place yet. Like, give me a hot second. It's almost like that. And you aren't forcing it, right? But that's what it gets interpreted as. Like, I'm not ready yet. Stop trying to push me to get to that point. I need to just feel what I need to feel. And I think when I was telling you this morning, this is really important for our clients, of like, when we are power, we need that safe space to be like, instead of what would it be like, something that's like, tell me more. Is there anything else that you have in you? What else needs to come out? Because it's almost kind of like, I get to that other side on my own after I go through all of my,
Mm-hmm.
Anger and frustration. So.
And this is one of those things that, like, the conversation that we had before your parents got in, and I was like, poke about the no. You were like, stop trying to make me like get along with this person. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not asking you, actually. I'm saying it's sort of almost like, I'm trying to figure out a better analogy than sort of dangling the carrot at the end by asking the question.
Mm-hmm.
You and I guess I have talked about this a lot. I have a theory or a practice that when we are asking for more, that when we are wanting to grow and expand, that we ask the question. We ask, who would I be if?
Yep.
Who would I be as? And in asking that question, a couple things happen. In asking the question, what would this be like? We bring about recognition where we potentially already have it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're in the heat of the moment when our lid's already flipped, asking that question can sometimes bring rise to the silty layer at the very bottom of the jar.
It's like the breastfeeding. It's like they nurse all the way to the end to get the hind milk. We're trying to get the hind milk here.
Yes. And so even though my saying that to you was it was like triggering even more of that frustration and anger.
Yep.
What I was sort of pulling you towards was that bottom nectar of asking the question, what would that be like? And you're like, I don't even know what the fuck that would be like, because I'm just too mad right now. Don't try to push me there. And in that brings up that, like, whether it's the belief that you need longer to process something, or whether it's the belief that it's not quite there yet. Like, you were done before you started, and I can see that. But when you are still in that moment, it's like, when we have these experiences, when we're asking for more, when we're asking to grow and expand, the universe, quantum, is always going to give us like awareness when we're in our conscious mind, when we're in our awareness and our consciousness, where we already have that. And then when we're not in that, we have all the stuff come up that's standing in the way of that. And so after the fact, like you said before, like, oftentimes my body will show me something before my emotions catch up to it, or my awareness catches up to it. And we know that we oftentimes will have an experience when our lids are flipped, and we see it afterwards, just like me with the garbage can, me with the, why didn't you say something about the alarm clock, right? It's that after awareness that comes, that the questions sometimes are sort of like the stimulus to bringing that up. Now, would I say that to somebody that already didn't feel safe with me?
Right.
Fuck no.
Right.
No, because they're not ready for that.
Right.
The practice that you and I are in, the deep end of the pool that you and I are in, asking that question, while frustrating, did two things. For you, it gave you the opportunity to be like, sort of bring some of that frustration and agitation like scooping out the bottom.
Yeah.
And do you want to know what it did for me?
Yes.
When you said this morning when you were texting about, do you see what I'm trying to show? You do this to me and you do this to your husband.
Mhm.
I had, for just a split second of a moment, I'm doing it wrong.
Mm. It's funny because as I was brushing my teeth, I was like, I can tell Tanya that because I know she won't think she's doing it wrong.
Right. But I had that
Yeah,
moment
you
where
do.
I was
Mhm.
like, and it was from the stillness place. It wasn't from the, oh shit,
Yeah.
am I doing it wrong? Am I being a friend wrong? Am I being a wife
Yeah.
wrong? Am I
Right.
saying things that are poking people and hurting people?
Right.
It was from, oh, this is curious. In the past, I would have thought she's telling me that I'm doing it wrong, that I'm a bad friend, that I'm a bad coach, that I'm like, I picked coach when I should have picked friend. I picked friend when I should have picked
Mhm.
coach, that I made the wrong choice. I did the wrong thing. I said the wrong thing and it's not okay. And I might hurt somebody else as a result.
But that's not what I meant at all.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
Mhm.
when we ask these questions, first of all, you and I are already in a safe place.
Right.
And that is part of what we guide. Like we're kind of in that stage of puberty. We're finding where we get to push back and take ownership of our lives and our direction. And some of the people that we work with, we're starting out and we're bringing them back to being an infant.
Yep.
We're bringing them back to the very beginning to start reparenting that inner child.
And for everyone listening, wherever you start is absolutely okay.
100%.
No judgment. No judgment. Because also, let's be honest, we started as infants too.
Mm-hmm. Shitting our pants and bawling all the time. Like, feed me. I gotta poop. I'm gonna cry. I don't know why. There you go.
Yeah.
And I'm mad. Oh, mad. I'm mad.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that brings me to ask, where are you at now with what you have ahead of you today? Because the next thing coming up is lunch with your parents. Oh, and
she didn't respond. I saw my text message. I don't know what she said yet. So they have to decide. I did send them a text message. I did say some things like, listen, I want to go and I want to discuss these things. I also know that one of you or both of you may not want to go and talk about it. And that's okay too.
mm-hmm.
So where does it leave us? It leaves us with, they need to decide if they want to go or not. And then we need to have a conversation. And, with speaking of, I need to look and see, like, is my dad emotionally defined? I would think he is. And my mom isn't. And I would, from a loving place, because that can be helpful. Like, so she's going to be feeling all of the things that I am feeling and my dad is feeling. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you asking me last night, like, what would it be like to say no was in? It's like me to say to them, what would it be like to like actually have a conversation where you're not emotionally charged? Like they don't even know what that is even like. Right.
Incomprehensible.
Yeah.
For them.
So, I said, I want to have a conversation from my 42-year-old self. I want to have a conversation from my 10-year-old self. And I want to have a conversation from a coach perspective. Not that I'm going to coach you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that I'm going to talk about things that I see from an awareness standpoint that I think is really important for our relationship.
I'm looking at your parents' profiles right now. Your dad is emotionally defined.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to look at your mom. I would love for you to share what you said to your husband. Well, your mom, of course, your mom's undefined because everything's undefined.
Yeah, everything's undefined. Mm-hmm. So, and my mom did say, what time do you want to pick us up for lunch? Like, what's so fascinating is like, and me being, this is also something else, like, when you have people, whomever they are, that are not okay with being with their emotions, sometimes we want to like skirt the issue, right? So it is important that I come back and be like, okay, I will pick you up. So by you consenting, I'm assuming you're anticipating us having conversations, right? Because neither of them actually came and said, I'm willing. Because that was the question I asked.
Yep.
What did I end it with? I said, you can contemplate this and let me know what you decide, right? So if you're willing, I will go to lunch with you today and we can talk. So no one ever really came back and said, I'm willing.
Yeah.
Right.
And
mm-hmm. In their own way,
from this part of your brain, and for those of you listening, I'm pointing to my forehead, from your prefrontal cortex, from the space of reason and consciousness, that they probably don't have the capacity to say whether they're willing or not.
Right.
And that is where, ideally we want to be either working with someone to help have our back in situations like this. And sometimes the practice isn't actually to go to the parents and say, this is how I'm feeling, because maybe we're not prepared for either being disregarded or not considered or having an anger backlash or any of those kinds of things. Right. So this is where clients for us that are in that more infantile baby stage.
This would not be an exercise. That's a really good point. You said that because because of the intense work that I've done over the last year and a half, right? Like I've been doing this for 3 years, but like intensity wise, been running a marathon for the last year and a half, right? Like lifting weights, running marathons, all the things. Yep. I can receive their anger and no, it's not me, right? That is within them. I can have these conversations and they can stonewall me, which I actually don't think that's going to happen. What I think is going to happen is I'm going to say how I feel and there's going to be lots of tears, right? Because it's going to be coming from a place of love, right? And like I already said, we're all these just little kids walking around, right? That haven't healed yet. Yep. So I'm not at all encouraging people to go out and like have these, never been to the gym before and we start deadlifting 300 pounds. That is not what Tanya and I are saying. Just for Erin, where she's at in her weightlifting life, right? I'm at the 300 deadlift, right? We're up in the weights now. I'm putting on 300 pounds. I was at 285, 2 weeks ago. Now I'm at 300 and now I'm prepared to do the 300, right? Yep. And right now, you and me having the podcast, we're doing the stretching. We're doing the, I'm loading on the bar. We're doing the 125. We're loading up to 200. We're doing these practice things, right? These practice weights so that when I have the conversation, I can do, 3 sets, 5.
Yep. Just like even for me this morning, my practice was when I was hearing your words and I said, I hear you, I feel you, I see you, was me actually imagining both you like for me, my visualization, my practice was to turn up the intensity. My weights, my 300 pounds this morning was seeing and hearing both you and my husband. You're doing it wrong. You're fucking it up. You're awful. You're like you don't know how to do anything right. You're always pushing people. You're always causing pain. You're always causing disruption. And being like, I'm okay.
Mhm.
My nervous system is like, this isn't true. I
Mhm.
know this isn't like right. But for most of us,
Yeah.
and even your parents,
Yeah.
they might hear, we've fucked up as parents. We're doing it
Yep.
wrong. And what you're saying right now is hurting us, and it's your fault,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And so this is you preparing for that lift,
Yeah.
preparing.
Because that is, like anytime I've ever said something about something in my childhood that wasn't in my mom's eyes, air quotes, perfect, she will come back and make comments like, well, I'm such a bad mother, or, oh, you had it so hard, or whatever comment might be made. And now I get to the place, like you said the other day, we don't blame anyone for their conditioning, right? Like
Correct.
we're all operating, unless we are aware, we are operating from, of course, of
Various
course,
states of trauma, right?
right.
The whether it's the fight, the flee, the freeze, the fawn, we're
Yeah.
all operating from some sort of stress adaptation in order to survive.
Yep.
Yeah.
So having this conversation is really helpful because it's almost I get to kind of like role play, from that perspective of like being in the car and like, and maybe they're not even aware, but like how we've done before with our clients, like time out, check in with your body, right? Like
Hmm.
everybody just take a breath. And also me getting to say like, listen, this is all coming from love. It has nothing to do with you in the sense of right or wrong, good or bad, because that is not even a thing. It's judgment, right? And it's coming from conditioning and it is wanting to bring awareness and it's coming from a place of unconditional love and caring. Because let's just be honest, if I didn't care, it's very easy for me to be like, I'm done with you, right? I could have just been like, no more, not seeing you for the next 5 days, right?
Yep.
And that's a choice that I'm making. And because I care so much, it's why we're having these conversations. And so, and me being able to receive whatever that they feel because of the intense work on my nervous system that we've done, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. And I go back to what I said at the very beginning, by us going first, like think of the gift. I think about the gift. I'm not doing it for this reason, but one of the gifts will probably be that my parents get to contemplate the relationship that they each have with their own father, right? Both of my
Hmm.
grandmothers are deceased. So both of their relationships with their father are very much contentious, resentful, anger, all of the things, right? And so the best, I don't say the best way, but like you do it, you learn by doing, you learn by, when I say learn by doing, what I mean is like they get to learn by me doing what I'm doing, right? So we can
Hmm.
talk about this in theory, but until we have this interaction with each other,
Hmm.
they don't get to experience what it will be like, right? They are experiencing right now from the parent perspective, but there will become a time, well, it will maybe not, they can choose, where they will be in the child perspective.
Hmm.
And I remember my dad telling me when I was in 5th grade, when we were practicing role playing with these girls, like what was I going to tell these girls? And he was helping me. And then he ended up working for my grandfather years down the road.
Hmm.
And then years down the road from that, he said, I never knew how hard it was for you to say what you needed to say to those girls until I had to tell my own father. And what are we afraid of? We're afraid of breaking connection. We're afraid of no love. We're afraid of,
Being
and
kicked out of the tribe.
yep.
Like that goes back to the fundamental basis of being a human is alone outside of the tribe. We are vulnerable. We are not safe,
Yep.
or at least we believe that we are not safe.
Yep.
And I love that you also had the insight to know what to say to your husband about, do you really
Oh
want to
yeah.
go with me?
Yeah. So you started that. And I think I went down a different rabbit hole, but my husband, you mentioned, Tanya, that you are emotionally undefined and your spouse is emotionally defined. So basically Tanya and my spouse are kind of very similar, and me and her spouse are very similar in that Tanya and my spouse are emotionally undefined. And so knowing what I know about that, I know that he's going to be picking up all of our energies. Right.
Hmm.
And let's just be honest, me and my dad have some pretty fucking powerful energy. Okay. Like two powerhouses. I don't even know how to describe it. Like some power. Right.
Hmm.
And I'm so grateful for human design and knowing that, because I told him when we came home from dropping our daughter off at school today, I said, listen, we're going to go. If we decide to go, do you want to go? And he's always so supportive of me, right? He's always like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Yes, I want to be there for you. Yes, I want to support you. And I go, what that might look like is you're going to feel all of the emotions that are in the car. And he was like, oh, no, no, no. But he probably wouldn't have been aware of that, right? He would have
Yep.
been in the car, picking his nails, reading a book, trying to just brace himself for impact, right?
Hmm.
Versus allowing him to have his experience.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean anything about me that you don't want to go and support me, right? It doesn't mean anything. Like you get to make your own decision. What do you want to do? It feels good for you. So I think that's really important to know, like, are you defined or undefined? Because we think all of it, and he's not at the awareness, obviously, that you are, Tanya, but because that's what me and our daughter are emotionally defined. So and she's pretty powerful too. So when the two of us, which doesn't happen as often, but when she's pretty dead set on something and I'm pretty dead set on something and we have those honest conversations, not yelling or anything like that, right? But like she's clear on what she wants and I'm clear on what I want, and those don't match. He feels it. He tries to please each of us and tamper it down. And both of us are like, get the fuck back, we got this, but
Yeah.
he can't handle it because he's not aware. He doesn't have that mind body connection to be like, is this mine? It's not. It's between Grace and Erin, or and so I think it's really valuable to know, like, what are we in terms of that, because how can we support ourselves? How can we support our spouses, partners, our children?
Yep.
Mm.
Yep. And learning how to ride through whatever emotions are present, whether they're ours or someone else's, is a valuable skill set to have, and one that's hard to explore before we have safety.
Correct, for sure.
So, yeah.
That'll just be our blanket statement. It's like, you have disclaimers of things. It's like the disclaimer is always like safety first.
Yeah, safety first, like making sure that we feel safe, that we're in an environment. That's not to say that it won't be uncomfortable. That's not to
Correct.
say that our hearts won't be racing sometimes, we won't be sweating or crapping our pants or crying or whatever. But it does mean that fundamentally we know that the person we are with is not going to judge us, berate us, have a point of view that, like, even if we do have a point of view that differs from somebody else, we don't need to make them feel wrong or bad or incapable, right? That safety is knowing that you are loved unconditionally, and that the intent and purpose behind everything is to empower each and every one by first making sure that we unconditionally love ourselves, that we have empowerment within us, that we have that self connection, our mind, our body, our spirit, our energy is contained within us. Because once we have that, like, possession and great measure of, like, all of the wealth of who we are, all of our wellness, all of our worthiness, all of our wealth exists within us. And until we can find that, um, we're needing to practice being in a place of safety and knowing what that is for us. So you are a courageous mofo. And I love that, like, how did I get so lucky that, I mean, most people dream to find one love of their life.
Yeah.
I've got two. Like, I'm married to my husband and I'm married to you. And, like, wealth beyond measure in what that has meant for me. So
Thank
I'm
you.
so
I'll
grateful.
receive that. And I feel the same way, right? Like,
Yep.
love so much my husband, and so grateful that we get to play. I call it tennis all the time, back and forth, volleyball, whatever your favorite sport is. It's
Yep.
constantly the back and forth.
Where the score is always love. How
Yeah.
cheeky, how
Yeah,
cheesy is
that
that?
is true.
Right?
That
The
is true.
score is always love.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I
On
appreciate
that note,
everybody listening. Yeah, everybody listening, and yeah, being able to be raw, real, and vulnerable. So
yeah.
thank you.
On that note, until next time.
Until next time. Bye for now.